Mary. Welcome to my kitchen here at Wild Heaven Farms. Today we're canning chicken broth, a staple in my pantry, something that I can make a meal with really fast any day of the week. So I'm just going to run over my items that I'm using here real quick, which this is my pressure canner. These are the jars. This is how I store my jars. After they get washed, they get turned upside down, put in a box that has a paper towel on the bottom. So you'll need your jars. In the bottom of your pan, you'll want to have your rack. So the way I do this for broth, I'm doing this in pints. You just saw me washing my quart jars. I actually had too much for 1 canner load, so I put it in the refrigerator in the pot, which we're going to look at here in a minute. And I'm going to can what's left today in pints, since I have 6 quarts. I had 7 quarts, but 1 jar busted in the canner, so you'll have that sometimes. So I'm just going to see how many jars will fit in here. So I'm just going to add my water and a glug of vinegar in here and get it going so that my jars can steam and sanitize. They say you don't have to do it, but I still do it. It's just a step I've always done. It's easy to do. You have to get your canner going anyway. So why not just sterilize them right inside your canner. This pan I'll use to dip and pour. Of course, that's better for quarts, but I've also got my, see, we'll need a towel. And so what I always do is I lay this folded in half. I lay down the tools that I'm using. This is a jar lifter. This is how you use it to hold on to your jars. Show you. You can practice with it, going in and out a few times. I'm going to be pouring water out of mine back into the pot. So I've got that. This is the canning funnel. You can see it'll fit down in the jars. It'll help me keep from making a mess. Now, the lids that I'm going to use, I'm going to heat them because they're Tattler lids and they must be scalded and held at a high temperature for, I try for 10 minutes, but longer is even better in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is get these rings ready right now. To go into the water in the pot. About these Tattlers, I have both the new and the older style. That box opened upside down. And the older style Tattlers. I have another video on it if you want to go look at that, about the differences and also about how I prepare them after I get them out of the box. For canning. You can look that up under seal failure fix. So, or look in my playlist for canning videos and you'll find it there. So Tattlers are 2-piece deals. So this is the lid, this is the ring. I guess you would call this the flat. And then this is the ring. So you put them together, you put them in your pan. I always try to have 1 or 2 more lids that I need for the jars, just in case something happens where a ring comes off, it touches the grease, you know, it's dirty, that I can just replace it with another one, because these do have to be heated for quite a while. So I'm gonna put the water in here on them and get some heat going on. I've got the water in my lids here. It's gonna take a while for this chicken broth to come to a boil, and that's what we want. We want this hot, we want this hot, and we want the rings hot. So there's not as much fat on this chicken as I thought. Let me show you. Down in there. So I'm just gonna get a spoon. I thought it would be a thick chunk, so I'm just gonna pull off what I can out of this, because grease will cause your seals to fail. Okay, so you can see my jars here. I've already added the vinegar. What I'm gonna do now is just put 1 inch or so of water in each jar. And then I'm gonna fill it up to what I know is my 3-quart line. because this is gonna steam. So some of the water, which I'm accounting for, that's inside the jars, will steam out while they're coming up to temperature. So if your canner says 3 quarts, you put in 3 quarts. If it has a line that says fill here, you do that. Just always be sure to read your canner instructions every single time. So we're just gonna put this on the stove. We're gonna go ahead and turn this on high. And our beef broth on high. And then our pans, oh, that is the pans we're gonna put on a very low setting because it'll take it quite a while. And then this we'll put on high. So hopefully everything will come together at the same time. And the one main thing that you want to do before you can every time is make sure your lock on the top works freely and that there's no food particles stuck in it and that this is clear. You need to hold it up to the light every single time and look through it. And then while I have the canner, I have the lid on like this so that everything can steam in there. It gets sanitized as well. So because I am gonna use a pan to dip the broth out with, it's a clean pan, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it in here with the jars so that it gets sanitized as well. Just sit it in there like that. And then once everything comes up to temperature, we'll start jarring it up. I was just straightening up here after getting everything going, and I realized that I can't put my vinegar up yet because once I start filling the jars, I'm gonna need it on this paper towel to wipe the rims to make sure you get any grease residue or food particles off of the glass rim so that we will get a good seal. So what I like to do is just fold a paper towel down to about a 2-inch square, and then I soak it down with white vinegar before I get started and have it here with my tools. Rings, we also need to get our rings ready. And so I'm using all small-mouthed jars so I can just pull them straight out of my big ball canning jar thing. And I just sit them back here, ready and waiting. You don't have to heat those. And if you're using metal lids, you should also have a magnet wand to retrieve your lids out of the water, where I'm gonna be using my tongs. And what else? You likely won't have to heat them. The directions now say just use them straight out of the box. Okay, so a little different view here so you can see what's going on. This has come to a boil first, which is exactly what I thought. It's been kind of boiling and steaming here for about 8 minutes already. This I'm turning down just slightly because we don't want it to actually boil. We just want it right before the boil. So sorry, I know this is probably loud, but this here is getting ready to come to a boil. So I'm gonna give it a stir with a nice stainless steel and see if I can't help it along, because it must come to a boil. I saw bubbles back here. So we want to make sure we turn that down even more. Okay, I think this pan has steamed long enough in there, and we want it to cool down so that I can touch it when the time comes. You always want to open your canner away from you so the steam all goes back there. And then I always sit it right on my sink. Do not touch this with your hands. And then I'll just sit it on my towel, and I'll put the lid back on. I'm actually going to turn this down until this comes to a boil, because we don't want to boil all of our water out. We just want to sterilize these jars. All right, let's get started. Okay, I'll show you one more here. And then I've got to get this canner filled. You've got to hold them down after you drop the ring on as well, because the hot air is pushing them up. So I've always told people you have to sneak the ring on so that it doesn't know it. All right, we'll do one more. That went so well. Okay, I'm going to do one more up close here so that you can get a good look at how I put those tattlers on. Now that I have all my jars in the canner, we're going to line up the arrows and lock the lid. This always pops up at first, and I just try to wipe it off. It eventually goes back down. You don't want to put your weight on yet. You want to let the steam come out of here for 10 minutes or until this pops up and it starts building pressure, which normally for me it's about 7 minutes. But this allows the air in here to be removed so that we end up with a complete pressure can. This is what it looks like when it's truly venting steam. You can see no pressure is building and the lock has not come up yet. So it's been 10 minutes that this has been venting steam. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop the weight on and let it start building pressure. It should quieten down a little bit now, but I've got this at half. So I'm gonna increase it a little. And then as it starts building pressure, every 2.5 to 3 pounds that it gains, I'll turn the heat down a notch so that we're not turning it down all at one time. The reason we don't do that is because fast temperature changes inside this pressure canner can cause your jars to siphon the contents out, get under the seal, and cause it not to seal. So it's just best practice. You can see here that it's starting to build pressure right away. And so that's about 2 pounds. Now that it's at 5 pounds of pressure, I'm gonna turn the heat from medium high to medium. Because we want it to still continue to build to about 11 pounds. My canner likes to run at 12, so that's kind of its sweet spot. So as long as it doesn't drop under the 11 pounds of my recommended pressure to be canning. Here I've just time-lapsed the pressure building to my 11 pounds. Now that it's at my 11 pounds of pressure, I'm going to turn it down just one more notch, but I'm going to watch it carefully to make sure that it doesn't lose any pressure. It can gain a little bit and you can still turn it down more, but you want to do it in little increments at a time. And if it drops under the 11 pounds or whatever your poundage is for pressure where you live, you're at your sea level, you have to start the timer all over again. So I'm going to set the timer, the kitchen timer, for 25. I actually only have to do these for 20 because they're pints. Let me check my book. I always refer to my book anytime I have a question, and I always read the directions before I get started. And so 20 minutes is the time for pints. So we'll clear that, and we're gonna set the timer for 20 minutes, and we're still gonna check it every few minutes to make sure that it's not gaining a whole bunch of pressure or dropping at all. So the sound of it, you can generally tell by the sound whether it's still building or whether it is starting to cool down or right on its sweet spot. Once the timer goes off, you'll just turn off the heat completely. You don't do anything else until this lock drops in the back. So don't touch this, don't try to unscrew it, don't do anything except wait on this lock to drop. You can see the pressure's at 0 here, but there's still a little pressure in there or this lock wouldn't be up. So we're just gonna wait on it to naturally fall. And now that the lock has dropped, we can remove the weight. We'll wait an additional 2 minutes before opening the lid. After your 2 minutes is up, with pot holders, you can twist the lid and open it away from you. After you take off your lid, you have to wait a full 5 minutes before removing the jars from the canner. And the reason for this is that siphoning that I mentioned earlier, when the heat fluctuates really fast. So we'll just give it some time. After you've waited at least 5 minutes, you'll just take them out. You don't want to leave them in the hot water to cool, because they'll develop something called flat sour. And once you taste it, you'll never do it again. And these are the 2 extra jars that I had sanitized, but didn't have enough broth to fill them, so I just ran them through. And there you have it. That's how you pressure can chicken broth. Okay, so it's the next morning, and here are my jars of chicken broth. We're gonna open them up. That one's sealed. 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 They all sealed. So now we'll just wash them up like you saw me do in the beginning of the video and put them back in this box for the pantry.